much for joining me, and welcome to a brand new Studio Monday. I'm so happy to be back with you after taking the month off for Stamptember. We're going to be starting off this month's Studio Monday with a look at the Simon Says Stamp October 2016 card kit. This card kit, Nuts About You, has so many fun things included in it, and I'm going to be sharing with you 4 different ways on how you can use this fun kit. One of the first things I'll be showing you in this kit is how to do some tone-on-tone stamping with the ink and cardstocks that you get in the kit. So I'm arranging the stamps from the Nutty About You stamp set onto a clear block. I'm making sure I have them lined up so that way I can go ahead and stamp this multiple times. I'm inking it up with some of the Tangelo ink that is included in your kit. This is Ranger Archival ink, and I really love this gorgeous orange color. When you stamp it onto the burnt orange cardstock, it adds this gorgeous tone-on-tone effect. Lining up these images onto a clear block before stamping saved me so much time because instead of having to ink up each individual stamp and then stamping it down onto the paper, I was able to stamp them all at once and then go ahead and fill in the smaller areas with a few of the smaller images included in the set, like this acorn. This acorn is one of 2 acorns that is included in the kit. The other one's slightly larger. I also filled in some of the other areas with some of the berries. There's 2 different berry clusters. There's one that has 3 different berries, and then there's a second berry image that has 2 berries. And I'll go ahead and stamp both of those onto this paper. I also did this technique with the blue cardstock and the blue ink that is included in your kit. This is Paradise Teal Archival ink and Audrey Blue cardstock. Again, both of these are items that are included in the Simon kit. I'm inking them up the exact same way that I did for the first panel, and I'll go ahead and repeat the filling in process with the smaller images as I did with the first panel as well. Now this card set features a really fun recessed panel in the card design. I'm going to show you how I did that. So to create the recessed panel look, I'm taking my cardstock that we've done all of our stamping on, and I'm going to line it up into my paper trimmer at the 1 1/4 inch mark. I'm going to cut it off, line it back up at 3 inches, and then I'm going to cut another 1 1/4 inch off of that card. That leaves me with 3 pieces of cardstock. I have one panel that is 3 inches tall, and then I also have 2 other pieces that are 1 1/4 inches tall. We're only going to be needing the top and bottom portions of this panel. We can get rid of the center area, and I'm going to repeat the exact same thing for the second panel. Once I cut these panels down, you can see as I line these up onto my A2 size card, how they create this nice 1 1/4 inch area between the 2 panels. This is where I'm going to do my stamping for my sentiment. I heat embossed that sentiment in some gold ink from Simon Says Stamp, and then I added a little bit of stamped embellishing around that sentiment. Here you can see I'm creating that recessed look by taking the 2 pieces of cardstock that we trimmed down and adding some fun foam to the back side. I'm attaching these down right on top of my card base, and you can see how it really frames up the sentiment beautifully and creates that nice recessed look. If you don't want as much dimension on your card, you could definitely go ahead and adhere these panels down onto your card base using just some regular adhesive. I also embellished these cards with a bit of patterned paper. I cut the paper into banners using the Simon Says Stamp stitched banner dies, and I also took a bit of hemp and tied that around the top portion of the card just to embellish it a little bit more. And here you can see our finished cards. I really love how that tone-on-tone stamping adds a really nice subtle pattern to the background and allows you to get a lot of use out of those stamps that are included in the Nutty About You stamp set. You can create a lot of custom backgrounds this way and a lot of really fun cards really quickly. Our second technique is going to be using the patterned papers that are included in the set. There are many ways that you can use patterned paper, but I'm going to be showing you how to create some really beautiful embellished sentiments using just a couple of supplies, and it really creates a great impact. I'm using this Painted Thanks die from Simon Says Stamp and a few patterned paper colors from the Perfectly Pad paper collection. I'm putting them into my Big Shot machine. I'm going to start cutting this word die from the patterned paper. I started off with the teal color. I'll go ahead and run this one through my Big Shot machine. After I pull it out, you can see it creates this gorgeous Painted Thanks, and I really love how it has that gorgeous pattern from the patterned paper. Really easy and really quick to make some really fun cards this way. I'm going to go ahead and repeat this, die cutting not only the teal plaid paper, but I'm also going to die cut this beautiful orange and teal plaid, and I'm also going to die cut a bit of orange as well. These colors matched up really well together. Now we're going to be lining these up onto our card base to create a really nice focal point and really add a nice impact to the sentiment. This is a great way to create a nice, clean, and simple card because the draw of the card is onto the sentiment itself, and it really adds some impact to what you're trying to say. So I'm going to go ahead and take these word dies and lay them down onto a piece of scrap paper. I'm going to apply Versamark ink over top of the word dies and get them covered with that embossing ink. Once I have the word dies covered with the embossing ink, I'm going to take some clear embossing powder from Simon Says Stamp and sprinkle that right over top of the word die, making sure I get it completely covered. I'll remove it with some tweezers just to help me kind of make sure I don't smudge any of the powder or take any of it off, and then I'll go ahead and heat set this word die until the powder has melted. This will result in a nice glossy finish over top of the pattern paper, and while it looks really nice just as it is with that one layer, we're going to go ahead and step it up a bit. Instead of applying just one layer of embossing powder over top of these word dies, we're going to create multiple layers. And as you take a look at this photo here, you can see how the multiple layers of embossing powder really add a lot of impact to the word die and really brings out the colors in the pattern paper. So I'm going to go ahead and repeat the same process of applying the embossing ink over top of the word dies. These word dies have already had one layer of embossing powder applied to them. We're going to go ahead and start working on a second layer. I'll apply the powder just like I did first time around, get the word dies completely covered, and then I'll go ahead and melt the sentiments once again. As we melt it again, you'll notice that the embossing powder has a bit more of a dimensional look, starting to have a bit more of a glossy embellishment feel instead of just a heat embossed sentiment. I ended up repeating the stamping and then applying the embossing powder a total of 3 times before I went ahead and moved on to the next step of the card. The next step was to make these a bit more stiffer and dimensional. I'm taking 3 other pieces of the Painted Thanks die. These are cut from white cardstock, and I'm going to glue those 3 pieces to the back side of each of our heat embossed pieces. This is going to allow us to have a bit more of a raised dimensional piece off of our card panel. The sentiments itself are domed and have a little bit of a dimensional look, but I want them to actually be physically raised off of the card. So I'm taking those 3 pieces and I'm going to apply spray adhesive to the front side of them, and I'll layer them on top of each other. This spray adhesive is one that I got at my local craft store. I don't know if you can still get it, but there are plenty of spray adhesives out on the market. And the one thing I really like about this one is that it does not have an odor, whereas a lot of spray adhesives have a bit of a smell to them. I don't really like to use those because there's a lot of toxic fumes involved with that. So I look for ones that don't have an odor, and this one works really, really well. So after I've layered those pieces up together, I'm going to attach them to my heat embossed sentiment, and I'll make sure that I have those adhered fully and kind of move them around until I have them lined up perfectly. And here you can see how that die cut has that nice raised dimension. It's a little bit thicker than the normal die cut, and that'll be raised up off of our card really nicely. So I'm going to take that word die and I'm going to apply one more coat of the Versamark ink over top of the die cut. The reason I'm doing this is because I want to be able to basically seal our heat embossed sentiment that we glued onto that stack of white die cuts and make sure that they're fully adhered together and also have that nice glossy raised dimension. So I'm going to apply the embossing powder over top, and I'll go ahead and heat set this, melting that powder. And as it melts, it'll melt around the sides of our die cut and really seal these pieces together. I'm going to adhere these down onto my card using some liquid glue. Just going to apply it to the back side, and then I'll go ahead and attach them right down onto our card. I'm laying a clear block over top of each piece as I glue it down onto the paper, just to make sure it has a little bit of time to bond to the paper and adhere down in place. I stamped a couple sentiments in between the thanks dies just to add a little bit of extra color, and I used a couple of brown inks to do that. Now our next card design is going to be featuring the Nutty About You stamp set, also the cardstocks and pattern papers that are included in your kit. On this card I used quite a few ink colors, and I also made sure that when I did my stamping I incorporated a lot of movement. And I'll go ahead and explain that here to you. I'm first starting off with my sentiment. This is going to be a grounding place for my stamped images to be able to work around and help guide where I'm going to be doing the rest of my stamping. I'm stamping my sentiment in Simon Says Stamp Clear ink, and I'm going to heat emboss this with some gold embossing powder. This gold embossing powder is fine detail gold from Simon as well, and the cardstock that I'm using is also Simon's 120-pound cardstock. I'm going to heat set this sentiment until it's completely melted and it has a nice raised finish. Next, it's time to work on our stamping. Now, first I'm going to talk about the color combination. The color inspiration that I pulled for these images is from the card kit. I looked at the pattern papers and I kind of picked out some colors that really matched with the card kit pieces. And I also grabbed a couple other colors that were complementary. So I pulled out some purple. I thought that would be a nice color for some of these berry sprigs. And I also chose a softer orange color. Those two shades were a little different than what's included in the kit, but I thought that they matched really well together. If you're looking for ways on how to better choose colors for your cards, definitely try looking at color combinations online, such as Pinterest. There's a lot of great color palettes that you can choose from there. Or look at designs in, say, like magazines or graphics. When products or promotional pieces are designed, color combinations are really important. And you can look at those as jumping off points for how to best choose colors for you. Because when you look at those, you know that those colors in the graphic or the product or whatever you're looking at match well together. So you're going to be able to be confident in knowing that the colors that you pull from a product or promotional piece are going to match well together because they've already looked really good on the product or promotional piece that you've chosen them from, and hence that's going to reflect on your card design as well. So hopefully that's a little bit of extra help in choosing color combinations because I know that can sometimes be difficult. Now, as I was talking here, I'm taking some distress inks. I'm using both antique linen and brushed corduroy to add some shading to the two corners of where I've done my stamping. Now, the reason I've chosen to do my stamping in these corners is that it allows me to create some movement. So I worked out from both sides of the sentiment and built outwards from there, and that helped balance not only the design, but it also helped me have a free-flowing form for where my leaves and other images were going to be flowing from. So it looks like that the leaves are flowing from the top right corner down by the sentiment and further down below, and that balanced it out really nicely. Now, I also wanted to use some of the pattern papers and the cardstocks that are included in this kit. So I'm taking this orange plaid, and I'm going to layer this onto a dark brown card base. This is an A2 side folding card that I've turned on its side, and I'm going to layer this paper right on top. I'm also going to layer our stamped panel onto our plaid paper, and that's going to create a little bit of a mat behind our stamped panel. Now, you'll also notice that I applied the plaid panel onto our card base at an angle. And it's opposite of the angle that we have going on our card panel. So where we have the leaves flowing from the top right down to the bottom left, I'm making sure that the plaid panel that's layered behind this is going in the opposite direction. So the top corner is up at the top left, and the bottom corner of that plaid paper is down at the bottom right of our stamped panel. And that's going to help balance those two pieces out because we've got so much movement going on there. I really love how this card turned out. I added some embellishing using some Nuvo Crystal drops on the leaves and on some of the berries, and I also tied a bit of hemp around this card as well. So I have one more card idea to share with you, and this one features an embossed resist technique. Embossed resist is where you have an embossed image and you do some sort of watercoloring or inking over top of that embossed image, and the embossing resists the ink or watercoloring that you're applying over top. So I embossed these little squirrels onto my paper, and I'm going to be doing some watercoloring over top of them. I'm taking the squirrels and mounting them into my MISTI stamping tool. And I took my EK Success powder tool and prepped the surface of this paper before I'm going to do my stamping. I inked them up with the clear embossing ink from Simon Says Stamp. Then I'll go ahead and stamp those down and apply some copper embossing powder from Ranger on top of these little squirrels. I'll heat set those images until the powder has melted, and then I'll get ready to start doing my watercoloring. You can see here a great example of how the heat embossing works, and you can see as the powder starts to turn from a fuzzy to a more shiny finish, you can tell that it has been embossed completely. So I brought out my Zig Cling color markers to do my watercoloring. This is the medium that I've chosen to do my embossed resist with. I'm going to speed this up quite a bit because this did take me a few minutes to put together. However, it's very simple to do. I'm just layering color onto the panel and blending it out with water brush. You can see it's very random with how I'm placing this, and I'm just using my brush to go ahead and start blending those colors out. I started off with a light green and I'm bringing in some yellow, then I went from that and worked with orange and red. And as I'm layering those colors on, you can see it's really starting to create some really fun layering effects. Now I want to go ahead and create more layers by adding color on top of what we've already applied. You can see I did some splatters in the background as well to add a bit of texture, and I'm covering up everything, literally covering it up completely with those Zig Cling color markers and coming in with second layers. And believe it or not, this really does make a difference. You can see as we do this, we have a lot of hard and soft edges, and it really added a lot of interest to create a really fun and vibrant look. The multiple layers also kind of layer up on top of each other and intensify the colors really, really well. Here you can see a close-up look of that embossed resist and how that beautiful watercolor background really sets these critters off. Now I wanted to add a sentiment, so I cut down some of that dark brown cardstock that was included in the kit into a little banner. I'm cutting V ends into both sides to go ahead and give me a little banner shape. If you have a banner die, feel free to go ahead and use that instead. I'm going to ink up the sentiment here. This is one of the thank you sentiments that's included in the Nutty About You set, and I'm inking it up with some clear ink from Simon Says Stamp. I'll stamp this down onto the paper, and then I'll go ahead and apply some white embossing powder over top. I'll go ahead and heat set this before I go ahead and attach it down onto my card using some foam tape. I just popped the piece of foam tape on the back side, remove the adhesive backing, and I'll layer this right underneath my two squirrels so that way it looks like the squirrels are sitting up on top of this banner. This helps ground them a little bit, and the dark contrast of that sentiment on the brown cardstock then against the watercoloring that we've done in the background really adds a nice bold statement. I finished off this card by adding some pattern paper behind this as a mat, and then I also put one of the acorns from the Little Bee Acorn sticker set into the center of the acorn that we had heat embossed. So I hope this has been some inspiration for you on how you can create so many fun, varied card designs with your Simon Says Stamp October 2016 card kit. If you have not gotten the Simon Says Stamp kit, be sure to head on over to the link we have in the video description and also at the Simon Says Stamp blog so that you can go ahead and get your own. Also, some of the items that are included in this month's kit are also available over at the Simon Says Stamp shop separately. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section below. And thank you so much for stopping by and spending some time with me. Please give this video a big thumbs up, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you can connect with us on social media at Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, YouTube, as well as our blog. Thanks so much for watching.